I was only 8 years old that Christmas. The snow was falling thick and quiet outside our little house in Willow Creek, a small town tucked away in upstate New York. I sat by the window with my nose pressed against the cold glass, watching the lights twinkle on the neighbors' trees. Inside our home, everything felt different. The rooms were dim. The air carried the smell of pine from our tiny tree. But it didn't feel magical like in the stories. My name is Emily. This is my story about how Christmas was never perfect when I was growing up, and how those imperfect days taught me the deepest lessons about love, family, and what really matters. We weren't poor in the way people think of poor. We had a roof, warm coats, and food on the table most days. But money was always tight. My dad worked long hours at the factory on the edge of town. He would come home with tired eyes and dirty hands, but he always tried to smile for me and my little brother Tommy. Tommy was 5 that year, full of belief in Santa and magic. Mom did everything she could to make the house feel like Christmas. She baked cookies with the last of the sugar. She strung popcorn on thread for the tree. She told us it would be wonderful. But I heard them talking late at night when they thought we were asleep. Dad's voice was low. How are we going to give the kids a proper Christmas this year? Mom answered softly, "We'll make it special with what we have. That's enough." I pulled the covers over my head and pretended I didn't hear the worry. A few weeks before Christmas, Dad lost his job. The factory cut shifts because orders were slow. He didn't tell us right away. He still left the house every morning like he was going to work. I found out later he was walking the streets looking for any job he could find. That year, we didn't go to the big tree lot in town. Dad cut a small pine from the woods behind our house. It was crooked, but we loved it anyway. Tommy and I hung paper chains and the few glass ornaments Mom saved from better years. We made gifts for each other. I drew pictures for Mom and Dad. Tommy colored pages from an old coloring book. Mom sewed a little cloth doll for me from leftover fabric. Dad fixed up an old wooden truck for Tommy. Christmas Eve came cold and quiet. We ate soup for dinner and sang a few carols by the radio. Tommy fell asleep early, excited for morning. I stayed up a little longer, looking at the tree. There were only 4 small packages under it. I told myself it was okay. But when I woke up on Christmas morning, something felt wrong. Tommy was already up, running to the tree, shouting that Santa had come. I smiled for him, but I looked around. Dad wasn't there. Mom was in the kitchen making coffee. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying. "Where's Dad?" I asked quietly. She touched my hair and said, "He went out early. He'll be back soon, sweetheart." Her voice shook just a little. We sat by the tree and opened our gifts slowly. Tommy loved his truck. I hugged my doll close. Mom opened the drawing I made of our whole family holding hands. She held it to her chest and whispered, "Thank you," But the house felt empty without Dad. The snow kept falling harder outside. Hours passed. Tommy played, but even he kept looking at the door. Then the phone rang. Mom answered. Her face went pale. She called us close and sat us down. "Your dad went to see Uncle Jack this morning," she said. "He was hoping to borrow a little money so we could have a nicer day." She paused. But Uncle Jack said no. I felt something heavy in my chest. Uncle Jack was Dad's older brother. They didn't talk much anymore because of old arguments about money from years ago. Dad had gone anyway, walking miles through the snow. Mom tried to smile. "It's all right," she said. "We have each other. That's the best gift." But I saw the tears in her eyes. We ate toast and eggs for Christmas breakfast. We played quietly. The day felt long and gray. Just as the lights started fading outside, we heard footsteps on the porch. The door opened and there was Dad. Snow covered his coat. His face was tired and cold, but he smiled when he saw us. He carried a small paper bag. Inside were a few oranges, a little candy, and 2 small toys Uncle Jack's wife had slipped him when Jack wasn't looking. "I'm sorry I was gone so long," he said. He hugged us all tight. We sat together by the tree that night. Dad told us stories about his own childhood Christmases. Mom made hot cocoa with the last of the milk. We laughed a little. We cried a little. That was the day I learned Christmas isn't about perfect gifts or perfect days. It's about showing up for each other, even when it's hard, even when you come home empty-handed. But that wasn't the only Christmas that broke my heart a little. A few years later, something even harder happened. Mom got sick right before the holidays, and everything changed again. Keep listening if you want to know what happened next. I'll tell you. That first Christmas, without Dad there in the morning, stayed with me. It left a quiet mark on my heart. I was still only 8, but I started noticing things more. The next few years passed in Willow Creek the way small town years do. Slow winters, long summers playing in the fields. But money never got easy. Dad found work again at the mill, but the pay was small. Mom took in sewing from neighbors to help. Tommy grew taller and louder. I grew quieter, watching everything. When I was 10, Christmas came around again. This time, Mom got sick just after Thanksgiving. It started with a cough that wouldn't go away. Then she got tired all the time. She still smiled and said it was nothing, but I saw her resting more. The doctor in town said it was her lungs, something from working in the cold, damp factory for extra money the year before. Medicine cost more than we had. Dad's face got that worried look again. We didn't talk about it much in front of Tommy. He was 7 now and still believed everything would be fine. But I heard Mom and Dad at night. "We can't afford the new treatment," Mom whispered. Dad answered, "I'll find a way, I promise." That December felt heavier than the snow outside. We put up the same little tree. We hung the same ornaments. but Mom stayed on the couch most days, wrapped in a blanket. I helped more around the house. I made soup. I washed dishes. I read stories to Tommy so Mom could rest. Christmas Eve came cold and clear. The stars looked close enough to touch. We brought a tiny tree into Mom's room so she could see it from bed. Tommy and I sang soft carols. Mom smiled, but her eyes were tired. We opened one gift each that night, like we sometimes did. Mom gave me a book of poems she found at the church sale. I gave her a scarf I knitted with yarn from the thrift store. It wasn't perfect. The stitches were uneven, but she wrapped it around her neck right away. "Thank you, my sweet girl," she said. Her voice was weak, but full of love. Dad sat beside her, holding her hand. Tommy fell asleep on the floor, with his head on a pillow. I stayed awake, listening to the quiet. I prayed the way Grandma taught me, asking for Mom to get better. Christmas morning was gentle. No running to the tree this year. We opened the rest of the gifts slowly. Right there in Mom's room, Tommy got a sweater Mom had finished sewing before she got too tired. Dad got new gloves for work. Mom got drawings from both of us and a small bottle of perfume from Dad. We ate oatmeal with a little cinnamon for breakfast. It felt like a feast because we were together. But the day was quiet. No visitors, no big dinner. Then, in the afternoon, something happened that I'll never forget. There was a knock at the door. Dad opened it, and there stood Mrs. Harlan from down the street. Behind her were more neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Tate, old Mr. Jenkins, even the pastor's wife. They carried baskets. One had a roasted chicken and potatoes. Another had cookies and pies. One had canned fruit and bread. There was even a small ham. "We heard your mom isn't well," Mrs. Harlan said softly. The whole street wanted to help. Dad stood there for a moment, too surprised to speak. Then he thanked them, with tears in his eyes. They didn't stay long. Just long enough to wish us Merry Christmas and say they were praying. When the door closed, Mom cried quiet tears, not sad ones, grateful ones. That night, we ate real food. We laughed a little. Tommy told silly jokes. Dad carved the chicken like it was Thanksgiving. Mom looked at all of us and said, "This is what Christmas is. People caring, people showing up." I nodded. Even though I was young, I felt it deep inside. A few days later, another surprise came. The mail brought a letter from the factory where Mom used to work. Inside was a check from a special fund for workers who got sick. Dad had filled out papers without telling us. It was enough for Mom's medicine and a few visits to the doctor. She started getting better, slowly. By spring, she was up and around again. But that Christmas stayed with me. It taught me that help can come when you least expect it. From neighbors, from strangers, from quiet kindness. I thought things might get easier after that. But life has a way of bringing new shadows. 2 years later, when I was 12, a different kind of hurt came. This one wasn't about money or sickness. It was about friendship, about feeling left behind. My best friend Sarah lived 2 houses down. We did everything together. We shared secrets. We made plans for when we grew up. That year, we promised to exchange special, handmade gifts for Christmas. I worked for weeks on hers. A bracelet made from colored beads and a little heart charm I found. I wrapped it carefully in tissue paper. But Christmas Day came, and Sarah didn't come over. I waited all morning. Then I saw her through the window, walking to the park with other girls, girls whose families had more. She wore a brand new coat, bright red and shiny. My heart sank. When I asked her the next day, she shrugged. My parents took us to visit relatives. I got busy, but I knew the truth. Her family had a little more money now. She wanted to fit in with the girls who had fancy things. I didn't cry in front of her. I just nodded and said it was okay. But inside, it hurt worse than anything. That Christmas, I sat by our tree alone for a long time. The bracelet I made for her stayed in my drawer. Mom noticed I was quiet. She sat beside me and put her arm around me. "People change, Emily," she said gently. "Sometimes they drift away. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you." I leaned on her shoulder. "It hurts," I whispered. "I know, sweetheart," she said, "but the hurt won't last forever." We had a simple dinner that night. Dad told stories. Tommy made us laugh. Family filled the empty places. A few days later, Sarah came over with a store-bought gift. She said sorry. We talked. I forgave her. We stayed friends for a while longer. But things were never quite the same. That was the Christmas I learned about letting go, about how love from family can heal the hurts friends leave, about forgiveness, even when it's hard. But the hardest Christmas was still ahead. When I was 14, an old family secret came out, one that changed how I saw everything. And it started with a box of letters falling from the attic. Keep listening. I'll tell you what happened next. I was 14 that Christmas. Time had moved on in Willow Creek. The little house still stood on the same quiet street. The snow still fell the same way. But I wasn't a little girl anymore. I noticed more. I asked more questions. I felt things deeper. Mom was healthy again, thank God. Dad worked steady hours at the mill. Tommy was 11, all legs and energy, always running somewhere. We weren't rich, but we were okay. Christmas felt a little easier that year. We had saved a bit. Dad brought home a bigger tree. Mom baked for days. Cookies, pies, cinnamon bread. The house smelled warm and sweet. I helped decorate. We pulled the boxes down from the attic, the same ones every year. Ornaments wrapped in yellowed tissue paper. Lights that only half worked. the star for the top that once belonged to Grandma. That day, Dad was at work. Mom was in the kitchen. Tommy was outside with friends. I was alone in the attic, reaching for the last box on the high shelf. My fingers brushed it. It tipped. It fell. The lid came off as it hit the floor. Old papers scattered everywhere. Letters, yellow envelopes tied with string, photographs curling at the edges. I knelt down to pick them up. I didn't mean to look, but the first letter I touched had Dad's name on it, in handwriting I didn't know. I sat there on the dusty floor. I opened one, then another. They were from a woman named Clara. She wrote to Dad years ago. When he was young, she called him little brother. She asked why he stopped writing. She said she missed him. My heart started beating fast. Dad never talked about a sister. He only ever mentioned Uncle Jack. Mom had said Dad's parents passed when he was small, and Jack raised him. I read more. Clara had been given up for adoption as a baby. Their parents couldn't keep both children. Dad knew about her, but they lost touch when he was a teenager. One letter had a picture tucked inside, a little girl with dark hair and Dad's eyes. On the back, someone had written Clara, age 6. I sat there a long time. The attic was cold, but I didn't feel it. I felt confused, hurt. Why had Dad never told us? I gathered everything carefully, put it back in the box, carried it downstairs. Mom was rolling dough at the table. She looked up and saw my face. "It's wrong, Emily?" she asked softly. She wiped her hands on her apron, sat down slowly. She picked up one letter and read it quietly. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were sad, but calm. "Your dad wanted to protect you kids from old pain," she said. "He thought it was better not to talk about it." I didn't understand. "But she's family," I said. My voice cracked. "She's his sister, our aunt." Mom nodded. "I know, sweetheart. I've known for years. He carried guilt about losing touch. He didn't want to burden you." That evening, when Dad came home, Mom called him into the kitchen. I stayed in the living room, but I heard everything. At first, Dad was quiet. Then his voice broke. "I didn't want them to feel the hurt I felt," he said. "I thought if I didn't talk about her, it wouldn't matter." Mom spoke gently, but Emily found the letters. She knows now. It's time. Dad came out and sat beside me on the couch. He looked older in that moment, tired in a way I hadn't seen before. He told me everything. How Clara was born when he was 2. How hard times came. How his parents made the hardest choice. How he wrote to her for years, but the letters stopped coming. "I thought she forgot me," he said quietly, "or didn't want to know me." His eyes filled with tears. I was ashamed I couldn't find her again. I reached for his hand. It was rough from work, warm. "You're not alone anymore," I whispered. "We can find her together." That Christmas season changed after that day. Dad found an old address in the letters. He wrote to Clara. A simple letter. telling her about us, asking if she wanted to know her brother again. We waited. Days felt long. We decorated the tree anyway. We wrapped gifts, but everyone was quieter. Then, a week before Christmas, a letter came back, in handwriting just like the old ones. Dad opened it with shaking hands. We all stood around him. Clara wrote that she had never stopped thinking about him, that she had married, had 2 children, that she lived only 3 towns away, that she would love to meet us. She came on Christmas Eve, a woman with kind eyes and gray in her hair. She brought her husband and her growing daughter. They carried a tin of homemade fudge and nervous smiles. It was strange at first. Quiet hellos, careful hugs. But then Tommy asked about her childhood, and she told stories. Dad listened like a boy again. We ate dinner together. Simple food, but the table felt full. We sang carols after. Clara knew all the words to the old songs. That night, under our little tree, we opened one gift each. Clara gave Dad a photograph, him and her as children, taken before she left. Dad cried openly. None of us tried to stop him. Later, when everyone was asleep, I sat by the window. Snow fell soft and steady. I thought about secrets, how they can weigh a person down for years, how truth, even when it hurts at first, can bring healing. That Christmas taught me something big. Family isn't just the people you grow up with. Sometimes it's the people you find again. Sometimes it's the people brave enough to open old doors. Clara became Aunt Clara after that. She visited often. She brought her family. Our house felt bigger somehow. But even with that joy, life still brought hard moments. 2 years later, when I was 16, Tommy got into trouble. Real trouble. The kind that scared us all. And Christmas that year became about second chances. Keep listening if you want to hear what happened. It's hard to tell, but it matters. I was 16 when Tommy's trouble came. He was 13 then, growing fast, voice changing, wanting to be seen as big. Willow Creek was still small. Everyone knew everyone. That could be comforting. It could also feel like eyes were always watching. Tommy started hanging around older boys after school. Boys who smoked behind the gas station. Boys who skipped class and talked about things I didn't understand yet. At first, it was just talk. Then it was staying out later. Then coming home smelling like smoke. Dad noticed. Mom noticed. I noticed. But Tommy pulled away when we asked. I'm fine, he'd say. Just leave me alone. That fall, money got tight again. The mill cut hours. Dad took extra shifts when he could, but it wasn't enough. Mom went back to sewing for neighbors. We all felt the strain. Tommy felt it most, I think. He didn't say it, but I saw it in his eyes. He wanted to help. Or maybe he wanted to escape. One night in early December, he didn't come home for dinner. Mom kept his plate warm. Dad walked the streets, looking. I sat by the window, watching snow start to fall. He came in after midnight, coat dirty, eyes red. He wouldn't look at us. Dad sat him down at the kitchen table. No yelling, just quiet questions. Where were you, son? Tommy shrugged. With friends. Then Dad saw the money missing from Mom's sewing jar. $20. All she had earned that week for groceries. Tommy's face crumpled. He started to cry. Not loud, just silent tears running down. I didn't mean to, he whispered. They said we'd just borrow it. Pay it back later. Mom stood in the doorway, hand over her mouth. Dad didn't raise his voice. He just looked tired, heartbroken. We learned the rest slowly. The older boys dared him to take the money. They bought cigarettes, beer. Tommy didn't drink, but he went along. He was scared to say no. The next day, Dad took him to the police station, not to press charges, to talk to Officer Grant, a man Dad knew from church. Officer Grant listened, told Tommy about kids he'd seen go down harder paths, told him it wasn't too late to choose different. Then Dad made Tommy go to each boy's house, apologize to their parents, promise to stay away. It was hard for him, humiliating, but he did it. The $20, Dad made Tommy work it off, shoveling snow for neighbors, raking leaves that hadn't been done, chopping wood for old Mrs. Harlan. Every penny earned went back into Mom's jar. Christmas was only 2 weeks away. The house felt heavy. No one talked about gifts. No one put up the tree yet. I watched Tommy change day by day. He came home straight after school, helped without being asked. His eyes looked older. One evening, he came to my room, sat on the edge of my bed. I messed up bad, Em, he said quietly. I scared Mom and Dad. I nodded. Yeah, you did. He looked down. I don't want to be that kid. I reached over and squeezed his hand. Then don't be. A few days before Christmas, something small but beautiful happened. Mrs. Harlan knocked on our door. She handed Mom an envelope. Inside was $30. For the boy who shoveled my walk so carefully, she said, and for the family who's teaching him right. Other neighbors did the same. A few dollars here, a bag of groceries there, a homemade pie left on the porch. No one said much. They just showed up. Christmas Eve finally came. We put up the tree late that year, quietly. Tommy helped string the lights. His hands shook a little as he placed the star on top. We didn't have many gifts, but what we had felt earned. Mom made a small ham from the money neighbors gave. We had potatoes and green beans from cans, cookies baked with the last sugar. After dinner, Dad asked Tommy to read the Christmas story from the Bible. Tommy's voice wobbled at first, but he read steady, about a baby born in a stable. No room at the inn. Shepherds in the fields. A light in the dark. When he finished, Dad put a hand on his shoulder. "We all make mistakes, son," he said softly. "What matters is what we do after." Tawny nodded, tears in his eyes again, but different tears this time. Mom gave him a hug that lasted long. I hugged him too. We sat by the tree late that night, just the four of us. No radio, no noise, just quiet. That Christmas had almost no presents under the tree, but it had something bigger. Forgiveness, second chances, the kind of love that doesn't give up. Tommy changed after that. He stayed away from those boys, got a paper route to earn his own money, helped Dad at home without being asked. He still made mistakes. Everyone does. But never that kind again. That year taught me something I carry still. People can fall hard, but with steady love and quiet strength, they can stand back up. Family doesn't turn away when it's hard. Family walks through it together. But life kept moving. I turned 18, graduated high school, started thinking about leaving Willow Creek. And the next Christmas brought a new kind of goodbye. One that hurt in a different way. Keep listening. I'll tell you about the year I left home and what I learned about roots and wings. I turned 18 the spring before that Christmas. High school ended with a quiet ceremony in the gym. Everyone clapped. Mom cried happy tears. Dad shook my hand like I was grown. Tommy grinned and said I had to take him with me wherever I went. I had a plan, a small one, but it felt big. There was a community college 2 hours away in Albany. They accepted me, offered a little scholarship, enough with a part-time job to cover books and a shared room. I wanted to study teaching, help kids like Tommy had been helped, show them kindness when they stumbled. Mom and Dad were proud, but I saw the worry in their eyes. Money was tight again. The mill was talking about more cuts. Mom's sewing couldn't stretch far enough. They never said don't go. They just smiled and said we'd make it work. That summer, I worked double shifts at the diner on Main Street, saved every tip, bought used textbooks, packed my clothes in one old suitcase. Christmas came sooner than I expected. It would be my last one in the little house for a while, maybe longer. We tried to make it special. Dad brought home the tallest tree we'd ever had. It touched the ceiling. We laughed, trying to get the star on straight. Mom baked all my favorites. Sugar cookies cut into stars and bells. Apple pie with cinnamon. Hot cocoa with real marshmallows she saved coupons for. Aunt Clara came with her family. They brought gifts and stories. The house felt full. loud in the best way. We decorated slowly, took our time with each ornament. I held the ones I'd made as a child: paper chains, popsicle stick stars, a clay handprint from when I was 5. Tommy helped string the lights. He was 15 now, taller than me, voice deep, but still my little brother. That December, snow came early, deep and soft. We built a snowman in the yard, gave him Dad's old hat, took pictures with Aunt Clara's camera. Christmas Eve, we sat by the fire. Dad read the story again, the same one Tommy had read years before, about shepherds, angels, a baby in a manger. I listened and felt something shift inside. Home wasn't just the house. It was these voices, these faces, this quiet love. Felt her thin shoulders, smelled the vanilla on her hands from baking. Dad gave me a small wooden box he'd made at the mill. Inside was a necklace, a simple silver chain with a tiny heart. From all of us, he said. Tommy had earned part of it with his paper route. I cried then, quiet tears. They didn't try to stop me. Christmas morning was gentle. We opened the rest slowly. Books for me, a new jacket for Tommy, gloves for Dad, yarn for Mom to keep sewing. We ate breakfast late. Pancakes with the last of the syrup, laughed about old stories. The year Tommy fought Santa's reindeer, ate the carrots. The year the tree fell over. In the afternoon, I walked the town alone. Down Main Street, past the diner, the school, the park where Sarah and I used to swing. Snow crunched under my boots. The air was cold and clean. I thought about leaving. How scared I was. How excited. That night, we sat together longer than usual. No one wanted to go to bed. Tommy fell asleep on the couch. Dad carried him to his room, like he was still small. Mom and I stayed up. She held my hand. "You're ready, Emily," she said softly. "You've always been strong. Quiet strong. The best kind." I whispered, "I'm going to miss you all so much." She nodded. "We'll miss you too. But home is always here, no matter how far you go." The next week, I left. Dad drove me to Albany in the old truck. Mom and Tommy came along. We were quiet most of the ride. Held hands when we could. They helped carry my things to the dorm. Met my roommate. Hugged me 3 times each before leaving. I stood at the window and watched the truck disappear. Felt my heart pull like a string tied tight to Willow Creek. That Christmas taught me about roots and wings. How love lets you go. How it waits for you to come back. How home lives inside you, not just in a house. I called every Sunday, wrote letters, came home for spring break, summer, every holiday I could. But life moved on. I made new friends, learned new things, grew in ways I didn't expect. And the next Christmas brought a different kind of challenge. one that tested all of us from far away. Dad got hurt at the mill, and everything felt uncertain again. Keep listening. I'll tell you how we held on through that winter. How love travels miles. I was 19 that Christmas. My first full year away in Albany. College kept me busy with classes, a job at the library, and new friends. But Willow Creek was always in my thoughts. I called home every Sunday evening. Mom would answer first, then Dad, then Tommy fighting for the phone. We talked about little things. Weather, school, who won the high school football game. That December started cold. Snow piled high back home. I sent a box of small gifts early. Scarves I knitted. A book for Dad, a joke book for Tommy. Mom sent cookies that arrived a little crumbled, but still sweet. I planned to come home the day classes ended, take the bus, be there for Christmas Eve. I counted the days. Then, 1 week before break, the phone rang in the dorm hallway, late at night. Long-distance calls were rare that late. My heart dropped before I even picked up. It was Mom. Her voice was calm but tight, like she was holding everything together with string. "Emily, honey, don't panic," she started. That's when I knew it was bad. Dad had been hurt at the mill. A machine jammed. Metal piece flew, cut his arm deep and broke bones in his hand. He was in surgery when she called. I sat on the cold floor by the phone, roommates asleep down the hall. I felt far away, too far. "He's going to be okay," Mom said. "The doctor said the bones will heal, but he won't work for months." Her voice cracked on the last word. I asked about money. She said we'd manage. But I knew what that meant. No savings, bills coming, Christmas quiet again. I couldn't sleep that night. I walked the campus in the snow, thought about Dad's rough hands, how he fixed everything, how he carried Tommy to bed that one Christmas, how he made the little wooden box for my necklace. The next morning, I changed my bus ticket, left 2 days early, took the long ride home with my suitcase and a heavy heart. Mom met me at the station alone. Her coat was old, her eyes tired. We hugged long, without words, then drove to the hospital. Dad was in a room with white walls and beeping machines. His arm in a big cast, hand wrapped thick. But he smiled when he saw me. "Hey, college girl," he said weakly. "Home early for the holidays." I sat by his bed, held his good hand. Tommy came later with Aunt Clara. We filled the room with quiet talk. No one mentioned money. No one mentioned fear. Dad came home 2 days before Christmas, slow on the stairs. Mom fussed over pillows and blankets. The house smelled like pine, but the tree wasn't up yet. We put it up together that night. Tommy held the stand. I strung lights. Mom handed ornaments from the box. Dad sat in his chair and told us where to put the special ones. His voice was tired, but being home made him stronger. Gifts were almost none that year. We didn't talk about it, just wrapped what little we had. A new shirt for Dad, from Mom's sewing money. Socks for Tommy. A bookmark I made for Mom. Neighbors heard about the accident. Food started appearing on the porch again. Casseroles, bread, a ham from Mrs. Harlan, envelopes with a few dollars tucked inside. No notes, just kindness. Christmas Eve was cold and clear. We ate by candlelight because it felt warmer. Tommy read the Christmas story again, his voice deeper now. Dad listened with eyes closed. Mom held his good hand. After, we sat quiet. Dad spoke first. "I've been thinking," he said slowly. "This hand might not work the same again. Might have to find different work." He paused. "But we're all here. That's more than enough." I looked around the room. The crooked tree, the few gifts, the people I loved most. And I felt it deep. Hard times come. They hurt. But love doesn't leave. It just gets quieter, stronger. Christmas morning, we opened the little we had. Slowly, gratefully. Then the phone rang. It was the mill owner. He'd heard about neighbors helping, wanted to do his part, offered Dad light work when he healed, pay during recovery from a fund. Not much, but something. Mom cried happy tears that day. We all did a little. Dad healed slow. Spring came. He learned new tasks at the mill. One-handed at first. Then, better. I went back to school after break. But something changed in me. I worked harder. Sent money home when I could. Called more often. That Christmas taught me love travels. Across miles. Through hospital halls. Over phone lines in the night. It shows up in casseroles on porches, in quiet hands held tight. But time kept moving. I graduated college, got my first teaching job in a town not far from Willow Creek, moved into a little apartment, started building my own life, and the next Christmas brought joy I didn't expect. A new person in my life. Someone who would change everything. Keep listening. I'll tell you about the year love found me, and how Christmas felt different again. I was 23 that Christmas, teaching second grade in a little school just outside Willow Creek. Close enough to drive home often. Far enough to have my own small apartment with creaky floors and one tiny window. The children in my class were sweet, full of questions, full of drawings for me. They made the days bright, but evenings were quiet. I read books, knitted scarves, wrote letters to Mom. I wasn't looking for anyone. I thought love would come later. When life felt more settled. But love doesn't wait for perfect timing. His name was Daniel. He taught 5th grade down the hall. Tall, quiet smile, kind eyes that noticed when someone was tired. We first talked at the school Thanksgiving play. I helped with costumes. He built the sets. One night after practice, we stayed late fixing a wobbly stage. He handed me a hammer. Our fingers brushed. Nothing big, but I felt it. After that, we found excuses to talk. Coffee in the teacher's lounge, sharing lesson ideas, walking to our cars together when it snowed. He told me he grew up on a farm outside town, lost his dad young, helped his mom raise younger sisters, worked hard to get through college. I told him about Willow Creek, about imperfect Christmases, about family holding on through hard times. He listened, like every word mattered. By December, we were meeting for hot chocolate after school, walking the town square, looking at lights, talking until the stars came out. I didn't tell Mom yet. It felt too new, too precious to share. But Daniel wanted to meet my family. "I'd like to spend Christmas Eve with you all," he said one evening. His voice was steady, but his hands held the cocoa cup tight. "If that's okay." I felt my heart flutter. "Yes," I said softly. "They'll love you." I drove home the day school let out. Snow falling gentle. Told Mom on the porch, "Someone's coming with me tomorrow night." She looked at me, smiled slow. "The fifth grade teacher?" I laughed. "How did you know?" "A mother knows," she said, and hugged me. Christmas Eve came clear and cold. Daniel arrived with a tin of cookies his mom baked, wearing a warm coat and nervous eyes. Dad shook his hand firm. Mom hugged him right away. Tommy teased him about being a teacher. Aunt Clara asked gentle questions. We put the star on the tree together. Daniel lifted me a little so I could reach. Everyone smiled. Dinner was simple but warm. Ham from the church. Potatoes Mom mashed smooth. Cookies everywhere. After we ate, we sat by the fire. Tommy read the Christmas story. Daniel listened close. His hand found mine under the blanket. Later, we walked outside. Just the two of us. Snow crunched soft. The sky was full of stars. He stopped under the old oak in the yard, took my hands. "Emily," he said quietly, "I didn't expect this, but meeting you has been the best part of my year." I felt tears come. Happy ones. "Me too," I whispered. He kissed me soft. First kiss. Under Christmas stars. In the town I grew up in. We went back inside, warm-cheeked. Mom looked at us and smiled, knowing. Dad nodded like he approved. Gifts were small that year, but the best one wasn't wrapped. It was sitting beside me on the couch, holding my hand. That Christmas taught me love can arrive quiet, unexpected, on an ordinary winter night. It doesn't need perfect circumstances. It just needs open hearts. Daniel drove back to his mom's house late, promised to see me Christmas Day. I stood on the porch, watching his taillights disappear. Felt full, like something missing had been found. The next morning, we opened gifts slow. Daniel a scarf I'd knitted in secret, soft blue like his eyes. He gave me a necklace with a tiny silver book charm. "For the teacher who loves stories," he said. We spent the day together, walking, talking, planning little dreams. That year, Christmas felt different. Still simple, still real, but brighter, because love was there, new and gentle. We dated through the next years, slow and steady. He fit with my family, I fit with his. But even with joy, life brings storms. 2 Christmases later, a big one came. Mom got sick again. This time, worse. And we all had to face something hard. Keep listening. I'll tell you about the Christmas we almost lost her, and how love held us through the darkest days. I was 25 that Christmas. Daniel and I had been together 2 years. We talked about the future quietly. A house someday. Children. A life built slow and sure. Mom had been tired for months. Little things at first. A cough that came back. Getting winded walking upstairs. Losing weight even though she ate. She waved it off. "I'm just getting older," she'd say with a smile. Dad watched her closer, made her rest more, took her to the doctor when she couldn't wave it off anymore. The tests took weeks. We waited, called every day, tried to keep Christmas plans light. Then, 2 weeks before the holiday, the doctor called. Mom was at the kitchen table when she answered. I was home for the weekend. Daniel beside me. Tommy in his room. Dad at work. She listened, nodded slow, said thank you, hung up. Then she looked at me. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell yet. "It's cancer," she said quietly. "In the lungs. Spread a little." The room went still. I felt the air leave my chest. Daniel reached for my hand. I couldn't feel it. Mom kept talking soft. "There's treatment. Chemo. Maybe radiation. They caught it early enough to fight." She tried to smile. "We'll fight." Dad came home early. Someone at the mill told him something was wrong. He walked in, saw our faces, and knew. Mom told him gentle. He sat down hard in his chair, put his head in his hands, didn't cry, just sat there. Tommy came out. We told him together. He was 17, big and strong on the outside, but he crumbled, cried like the little boy who once believed in Santa. Mom held him, rocked him like when he was small. That night, we sat in the living room. Tree half decorated, lights blinking slow. No one spoke much. Daniel stayed, made tea, sat quiet beside me. His presence was a gift. He didn't try to fix it, just stayed. The days blurred. Doctor visits, more tests. Words like stage 3 and aggressive, but also treatable and strong woman. Christmas came closer. We didn't know if Mom would be in the hospital or home. Chemo started fast. Made her sick, quick. Hair started falling out in soft clumps. She wore a scarf Aunt Clara brought. We tried to plan a quiet holiday. No big meals, no company, just us. But the town heard. Willow Creek always hears. Food appeared again. Soups easy on the stomach. Soft blankets, cards with prayers, money tucked in envelopes for gas to the hospital. Aunt Clara came every day, sat with Mom, held her hand when the nausea came, told old stories to make her smile. Christmas Eve was cold. Mom was home, weak but home. We brought the couch closer to the tree, piled blankets on her. Daniel and I finished decorating quiet. Tommy helped. Dad sat beside Mom the whole time. We didn't open gifts early, didn't read the story out loud, just sat together, held hands in a circle, prayed soft. No one knew what to say to God. We just asked for time, for strength. Mom looked at us all, her voice thin but clear. "I'm not afraid," she said. "I've had a good life. You kids, your dad, all of you here. That's my Christmas." I cried then, quiet tears down my face. Daniel wiped them gentle. Dad's eyes were wet. Tommy leaned on Mom's shoulder, careful. We ate soup for dinner, drank weak tea, watched the lights on the tree blink, red, green, gold. Later, Mom fell asleep on the couch. We covered her soft. Dad stayed in the chair beside her. Didn't move all night. Christmas morning came gray, snow falling heavy. Mom woke weak but smiling. We opened the few gifts slow. A new scarf for her, worn socks, a book of poems, things small and soft. The best gift was her voice, weak but there, saying "I love you" to each of us. Daniel gave me a ring that day. Not engagement, just promise. Simple silver band. Put it on my finger quiet. Mom saw, smiled big, held our hands together. That Christmas was the darkest, the quietest, the most painful. But it was also full of love, raw, real, the kind that shows up when everything else falls away. Mom fought hard. Chemo, hospital stays, good days, bad days. Spring came slow. Then summer. Treatments worked some. Tumor shrank. Hair grew back, thin and gray. She got stronger, bit by bit. Not all the way, but enough. Enough to sit on the porch, watch flowers bloom, hold my hand when Daniel and I got engaged the next fall. That dark Christmas taught me something I'll never forget. Love doesn't always feel warm and bright. Sometimes it feels like sitting in the dark, holding someone's hand. Sometimes it's soup and silence. Sometimes it's just being there. And that's enough. More than enough. But life surprised us again. 2 Christmases later, joy came in a new way. A tiny cry in the night. Our first child. Keep listening. I'll tell you about the Christmas I became a mother, and how the circle kept turning. I was 28 that Christmas. Daniel and I had been married 2 years. We lived in a little house on the edge of Willow Creek. White siding, blue shutters, a porch big enough for 2 rocking chairs. Mom was still with us, weaker than before, but steady. The cancer stayed quiet after treatment. She came over often, baked with me, sat on the porch, and watched the seasons change. We had tried for a baby for a year. Quiet hopes, quiet disappointments each month. We didn't tell many people, just held each other in the dark when it didn't happen. Then, one cool September morning, the test showed 2 pink lines. I sat on the bathroom floor and cried happy tears. Daniel came home from school early that day. I showed him. He knelt down, put his hand on my belly, whispered thank you over and over. We told Mom and Dad first, drove to the old house. Mom knew the minute she saw my face. She stood up slow, hugged me long. Dad's eyes filled. He shook Daniel's hand, then hugged him too. Tommy was away at trade school. We called him. He shouted so loud the neighbors probably heard. Aunt Clara cried when we told her, said she'd start knitting right away. The months passed, gentle. Morning sickness came and went. Daniel read baby books out loud at night, rubbed my back when it ached, talked to my belly every evening. Mom sewed tiny clothes from soft fabric. Dad built a cradle in his workshop, sanded it smooth with his good hand. We found out it was a girl, chose the name Lily after Mom's favorite flower. Mom smiled big when we told her, said it fit. December came cold and bright. I was due any day, big and slow moving, but happy, so happy. We decorated our little house early. White lights on the porch, a real tree in the living room, soft ornaments high so little hands couldn't reach someday. Mom and Dad came over often, brought soup, sat with me when Daniel was at school. We talked about everything and nothing. 2 days before Christmas, the pains started. Light at first, then stronger. Daniel stayed calm on the outside. Packed the bag we'd prepared months ago. Called Mom. She came right away. Held my hand in the car. Dad drove steady. Tommy met us at the hospital. He'd come home early. The hours blurred. Pain. Breathing. Daniel's voice in my ear. Mom's cool hand on my forehead. Then, late on Christmas Eve, Lily came into the world. A small cry, strong and clear. The most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. The nurse wrapped her soft, placed her on my chest. Warm, tiny, perfect fingers, dark hair like Daniel's. I looked at her and cried. Daniel cried, leaned over us both, whispered her name. Mom stood at the door, tears running quiet. Dad beside her, arm around her shoulders. Tommy peeked in, eyes wide, grinning big. They let us have a moment alone. Just the 3 of us. New family. Under hospital lights that felt like stars. We came home Christmas Day. Snow falling, gentle. The house warm and waiting. Daniel carried the car seat, careful, like it held the whole world. Mom had come ahead, lit the tree, made the bed fresh, soup simmering on the stove. We sat in the living room, Lily asleep in the cradle Dad made. The tree lights blinking soft, red, green, gold. Mom held her first, rocked slow, sang an old lullaby, her voice thin but steady. Dad looked at her like she was magic. Tommy took a picture, said he'd be the best uncle. Daniel and I sat close on the couch, his arm around me, my head on his shoulder. We watched our daughter sleep, watched our family fill the room with quiet love. There were almost no gifts that year, just one small stack. A tiny stocking Mom knitted, a soft blanket from Aunt Clara, a rattle Daniel's mom sent. But we didn't need gifts. We had Lily, born on Christmas Eve, our little light. That night, everyone went home late. Mom kissed Lily's forehead, whispered, "Welcome, sweet girl." Dad hugged me long, said, "You did good, Emily." Daniel and I sat up with her, fed her, changed her, stared at her tiny face. I thought about all the Christmases before, the hard ones, the quiet ones, the dark ones, and how they led here, to this moment, this perfect, imperfect joy. That Christmas taught me the circle keeps turning. Pain and joy, loss and new life. One generation hands love to the next. Quiet, steady, unbroken. Lily is grown now, has children of her own, but she still asks about that Christmas, the one when she came home under the tree. And I tell her every detail, because some stories need to be passed on. But there's one more Christmas I want to share. The last one with Mom. The one where we said goodbye and thank you. Keep listening. I'll tell you gently. It's hard, but it's full of love. Someday. I was 35 that Christmas. Lily was 7, full of questions and laughter, running through the house with Tommy's old energy. Our little boy, Samuel, was 3, quiet like his dad, loved sitting on laps and listening to stories. Mom had been tired again for a year. The cancer came back quiet, deeper this time. Treatments helped for a while. Then they didn't. We knew. The doctor said months, maybe less. Mom took it calm, like she always did. "I've had more than my share of days," she said, "and every one was a gift." She wanted one more Christmas at home, in the old house where it all began. We made it happen. Daniel and I moved in for December, brought the children, turned the living room into her space. Hospital bed by the window, so she could watch the snow. Dad never left her side, held her hand, read to her, brushed her hair gentle. Tommy came home. Aunt Clara, too. The house filled slow with the people who loved her most. We decorated early. Soft white lights everywhere. A small tree in her room. Ornaments from every Christmas past. The crooked star on top. The clay handprint I made when I was 5. Lily and Samuel helped careful. Hung paper chains low so Grandma could see. Sang carols soft. Mom smiled at every note. We didn't pretend. We didn't hide the truth from the children. Lily understood enough. She drew pictures for Grandma every day. Samuel brought his stuffed bear to keep her company. Neighbors came quiet, brought soup, sat a while, held her hand, said thank you for all the years. One afternoon, Mom asked me to sit close. She was weak, voice barely above a whisper, but clear. "Emily," she said, "I want you to know something." I leaned in, took her thin hand. "You were my Christmas miracle. Every day with you, with Tommy, with your dad, with these little ones now." She paused long, breathed slow. "I learned long ago that Christmas isn't perfect. It's real. It's hard sometimes. It's beautiful always, because it's love showing up, again and again." Tears ran down my face. I didn't wipe them. "I love you, Mom," I whispered. She squeezed my hand, weak but sure. "I know, sweetheart. I've always known." Christmas Eve came still and cold. Snow fell thick outside. We gathered around her bed. Dad on one side, me on the other. Daniel, Tommy, Aunt Clara. The children on pillows on the floor. Tommy read the Christmas story one last time, his voice steady, about a baby, a stable, hope in the dark. When he finished, Mom spoke soft. "Thank you," she said to all of us, "for every imperfect Christmas, for every perfect moment inside them." We sang Silent Night, voices low. The lights on the tree blinked gentle. Outside, snow covered the world quiet. Mom fell asleep peaceful. We stayed close, held vigil through the night. She slipped away just before dawn on Christmas morning. Quiet, no struggle. Dad holding one hand, me the other. Her face calm, like she saw something beautiful waiting. We cried, held each other, let the children come close, told them Grandma was at peace, that love doesn't end, it just changes shape. Later that day, we opened the few gifts slow. Mom had wrapped them weeks before. A book for Lily, a wooden truck for Samuel, like the one Dad fixed for Tommy long ago. A letter for each of us. In mine, she wrote, "Keep telling the stories, Emily. The real ones, the imperfect ones, they matter most." We ate a little, sat by the tree, watched the snow, felt her still in the room. That was the hardest Christmas, and the most sacred. It taught me the final lesson. Love doesn't stop at goodbye. It lives in the stories we carry, in the lights we still hang, in the hands we hold when it's hard, in the quiet strength we pass on. Now I'm the grandma, sitting by my own fire, telling Lily and Samuel and their children these stories about Christmases that weren't perfect, about a family that held on, about love that showed up every single time. And I tell them what Mom taught me. The greatest gifts aren't under the tree. They're the people around it, the memories we make, the love we give when it's hard. That's the real Christmas. Imperfect, beautiful, true. This was my story, our story. All the Christmases that shaped me. Thank you for listening. If it touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more grandma stories. Maybe your own imperfect Christmas is teaching you something too. Hold it gentle. It's a gift. The end.